Welcome to Parenting Off-Script, the podcast that dives deep into the beautifully complex world of special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND parenting. I'm Kate Gresswell-Pettitt, your host. If you're raising a child with additional needs, or perhaps navigating parenthood while managing your own additional needs, you know that the rule book was thrown out long ago. You're not following a general guide, you are truly parenting off script. Join me each week as I speak to incredible parents, advocates and experts from all walks of life. We'll share the real stories, the unexpected challenges, the hard-won victories and the profound joys that come when you embrace a different way of parenting in the 21st century. So take a deep breath, grab your favourite drink and let's get started. Well, shall I start by talking about why I thought we should have this conversation?
Yes.
Why I think this is a conversation that's needed. So I'll start with a bit of background on kind of how we met and how we got chatting. Yes. We met through our kids, right? They do like a weekend club together and we got chatting, as you do at these things. I immediately clocked like, this is a cool parent. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna chat to this guy, gonna find out what his deal is. And I think I could already sense at that point that you were neurodivergent. Mm.
What gave it away?
Just your whole vibe. And I think at that point in my life, it was a really interesting point because I think when we met, had I just had my youngest?
You did, yeah.
I just had my youngest. So my eldest was five, just turned 5. And we were going through a really difficult time with his school. So he was in mainstream school. He was coming to the end of his reception year and he had had an awful time, a really, really tough time. And we were at loggerheads with the school because they were very punitive in their approach. Mm. Their view was this child is misbehaving and so needs to be punished. And they punished him with suspension. Weeks after he had turned 5, they suspended him. And that really got me thinking about the world in which we operate is not friendly to neurodivergent people, full stop, but I think especially neurodivergent children. And there's been this sea change in the last few years in how we understand neurodivergence, and that is incredibly welcome. But still, the structures in society, and especially if you are parenting, whether you are parenting a neurodivergent child or if you are neurodivergent yourself as a parent, society is not set up for us, right?
No.
And I knew when I met you, I was like, okay, this is a guy who, he's a parent. He is clearly absolutely incredible with his daughter. He's so devoted to her. You're so attuned to each other in terms of regulation, in terms of need, in terms of when things become overwhelming. I was like, I want to find out more from this guy about his experience. And we got chatting about how you had an ADHD diagnosis. How old were you?
I was 6.
6. So you're the same age that my eldest is now. And then we started having conversations about schooling because you homeschool your daughter.
Yeah.
I was really torn between what I was raised with, which is that education is the single most important thing. The best thing you can possibly do is work incredibly hard at school and do what you're told and behave perfectly and do brilliantly in your exams, go to the best universities, have a fantastic career. Suddenly that wasn't playing out with my own child. Mm. I knew from the day he was born that something was different about him. And I was saying to the people around me, including health professionals, including his dad, something's different here and I think this should be explored. And I was brushed off continually for years until he started getting suspended from school. Mm. And I felt like, how has it got to that point that this very young child, I mean, a 5-year-old is essentially still like a tiny tot, right? Like they're still so young.
Yeah.
How has it got to the point where this child is being denied an education, which is his right as enshrined in law, and yet no support has been forthcoming despite me demanding it for years? And since then, I've been on a real journey with my son. And it got me thinking more and more about the challenges that are faced by families like ours. Now, there's a few other things that we've got in common, in that we both moved to this area of the country kind of as adults, didn't really have any links here. I moved here for work 10 years ago. I love it. I absolutely love the area, and I would never live anywhere else. I'm so glad I moved here. But I don't have family around me, and I know that you and your partner don't have family around either. So that's tough because you've not got that network. And I find, especially in the Northeast where we live, it's the norm to have your parents around, to have that grandparent support, because there's such an embedded sense of family community. When you don't have that, it becomes obvious. And people say, oh, are your child's grandparents not helping? Or they, and you have to explain that. I also have found, since my son's challenges have been taken more seriously and he's started now getting diagnosed and getting proper support, and he's about to now go into a specialist school, my family still refuse to believe that there is anything going on. And my dad, who is a psychologist, trained as a child psychologist, says it's simply bad behaviour. You are not firm enough with him. That's what he says. You don't say no to him enough. You're too soft on him as a parent. And I was thinking about your experience as a little boy with ADHD.
Yeah.
What would people say to you and your parents?
I wasn't doing well at school. At 6 years old, I was interrupting in class. I was being disruptive. And I already showed signs of not being able to concentrate and focus on the tasks in hand, right? And so initially they thought it would come down to dyslexia, because dyslexia was a lot more kind of accepted and normalized back then.
Yeah.
I guess they'd, talked about it more. And by the end of the hour tests with the psychologist, he was like, your son isn't just ADHD, he's really ADHD. And so from that point on, I was ADHD. But other than some like slight changes to my diet, so like no E numbers was a big thing, and no sugar. After about 6 months, it was all kind of forgotten. And we no longer really talked about the ADHD. I think in part it was because we didn't really understand what it was.
Because this was the early 90s, right?
Yeah, this was the early 90s. So when I was 6, it was 92. And it was just kind of forgotten about. And I always remembered it in the back of my head, because at 6 I had this label ADHD, but I never really understood what it was until later in my 20s when I started looking into it, because I struggled so much throughout my entire life, even today, with my ADHD. And I think, I've already forgotten what the question was, but looking back at my childhood, one of the biggest struggles wasn't the fact that I couldn't concentrate, it wasn't that I was hyperactive. It was that I was always getting told off. I always remember I was always in trouble. I was always a bad kid. I was always like lazy or disruptive. And I remember being confused, because I was like, well, I'm not lazy, and I don't think I'm a bad kid. And the school reports was like, has so much potential if only he applied himself. And I'm like, but I try. And it's a misconception that ADHD people don't try. Like, we're trying harder than the average, because we're struggling with this neurodivergence that we've been gifted with. And so it was always very like confusing. And by the time I became a teenager, I had my self-esteem and anxiety was all over the place. I believed that there was something wrong with me and that I was a bad kid. And you start believing the labels that you've been given countless times. I can't remember what the numbers are, but a child with ADHD will get told off however many thousands of times extra a year than a non-ADHD child, or especially boys, because they present usually like a lot more hyperactive and disruptive, whereas the ADHD girl, generally it's internal, but still just as like chaotic.
And girls generally mask
really well,
quite effectively.
Yeah. And girls, from all the women that I know with ADHD, a lot of them are quite, successful in the corporate world, in the business sense, in the making money sense. Whereas a lot of the guys, they just keep struggling. And it's interesting. I don't know if there's like a correlation there, but there's definitely, I don't know.
Tell me more about how that affected your self-esteem as you grew up, as you came into adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, because I didn't fully understand what the impact of my ADHD was having on me, there's like a lot of overlap and confusion between like, who am I and what's my ADHD? I definitely masked really right up into my 30s. I used to always present this very hyperactive, confident, funny guy because I knew people liked that version of me. And at my core, some of that is true, but I used to only show that bit. And then trying to like decipher what's me, what's my ADHD, and what's this masking thing is confusing. And I definitely had to work hard to like build up my self-esteem because I just didn't really know who I was. And
then how did that affect you and your thinking about fatherhood? So when Briggy became pregnant and you knew you were going to be a dad, did you think about, how am I going to manage this as a neurodivergent parent?
My main concern, actually, when Briggy got pregnant was the year that I got re-diagnosed and started my medication journey. And so I was hopeful at that point because the medication for me was a really nice tool to help me manage some of my ADHD symptoms. But my concern with having a child was more about how I was going to interact with the child. So like I remember getting shouted at a lot because I was always getting in trouble. I remember being misunderstood. I even remember as a child being misunderstood, where I was being told that I did something wrong, but in my mind I was like, but I didn't know. It was always a case like, but I didn't know, because I was all over the place. Yeah. Like I'd smash this, but I didn't realize that was a problem. Like I remember being in classes and people were doing something. I'm like, how do you know what to do? Yeah. Like they're all doing tasks. And I'm like, but I just completely missed it.
The processing is so different for you.
It is. It takes me longer to sometimes get it. And it's not because, it is because I'm like misplaced in my mind, right? And so I knew having a child, I wanted to be a lot more patient than people were with me when I was growing up. That was a really important thing.
And you're so empathetic, not just with your own child, but when you've interacted with my son.
Who, across the board.
Let's face it, can be a bit of a dick sometimes.
He struggles, right? He struggles.
He's a big character. He doesn't understand those social nuances. He can say and do things that can come across as rude.
Yeah, 100%.
And you are so patient and calm and understanding with children. And kids love you as a result. I've seen how children interact with you. They're like, this guy gets us.
I see. Kit, of course, and other children that are, when they get triggered and then they have an explosive reaction. Like that was me.
Yeah.
And I got in so much trouble for it. And like I used to get like sent to my room and detentions and all the rest of it. And I always thought like, God, I've got no control over this. And it's taken me decades to get my anger under control. And it's not just because of the ADHD. It's like there's a good dose of childhood trauma in there. And then, like whatever else that comes along. But so, yeah, with Bella, she was like the practice run, right? Like every time she would flip out or get angry, at the beginning, I would get triggered and like lose my cool a few times. It definitely happened.
Which is understandable when you're also exhausted. If you're parenting a young child, it is so tiring. So tiring.
Every parent will struggle with their children if their children are neurodivergent or not. But then if you're neurodivergent yourself, you've got even less space to find that peaceful place. Because when you're triggered, you've got like a split second before the reaction happens. It's like, it's so unfair, really.
And the way parenting is in modern society is there isn't a lot of room for self-regulation.
No.
Because we don't raise our children in communities, in villages, like really we would have. We're very much encouraged to be these self-contained units. And so there's an overwhelming amount of pressure on you as a parent to be perfect, because you are everything to that child. You're there, you know, you and your partner are the sole carers. And so where's the time for yourself? Where's the time to self-regulate? Where's the time for self-care?
And there's definitely this thing that I've noticed in society where we all feel uncomfortable with those around us. Like I saw it first in the playground. Like, we do some things with Bella that a lot of other parents don't do, and they'll look at us sideways like, why aren't they correcting her?
Can you give me an example?
So, for example, well, here's a classic, right? So if Bella's got a toy and then another child, say her age, wants to play with that toy, and she'll go, no, it's mine. I know a lot of parents will look at me and go, why aren't you correcting her to share? Because it's okay to share. And I believe sharing is great and we should all do that. But I wouldn't tell my partner to share her coffee if the guy next to her wanted some of her coffee. And I believe in, like, you know, Bella will share because she'll see me and Briggy share and we'll model that behavior. But my point is, I can feel it. I can feel like society's watching. And I think we all need to kind of like just give each other some grace and be like, look, we're all doing things the best that we can. We're doing things differently. And that's fine. You know, like, support the other parents and not kind of look at them and go, oh, well, they clearly don't know what, like, fuck all that. Can I swear on this?
I totally get that. I will quite often, you know, when I'm out and about with Kit, he will, when he's dysregulated, he will say things like, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I just respond by going, I don't think you will. Or, why would you say that? Or, that's a silly thing to say. I don't think you really mean it. I basically stay calm. And I just kind of don't make a big deal of it. Because I think he's looking for a reaction. Because what he's really saying is, I'm really pissed off about something. Or I'm really dysregulated.
Yeah.
And I need you to hear me. And so I'm kind of acknowledging it, but not meeting that with my own dysregulation.
Yes.
But the reaction that I will often get from other parents is shock. And look, I get it. You know, if you hear a particularly very young child saying things like that, you think, oh gosh,
it triggers
where have
everyone.
they heard that from? And in fact, the school where he was for his reception year said, well, he must be picking up language like that from you at home.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? They deflect any responsibility and blame you at the same time. That's a classic.
Yeah. But the judgment from other parents is very real. Very real. And I think a lot of it is people parent how they were parented.
Yeah.
And listen,
unless they figure it out themselves, right?
Before I had kids, I was like, I'm going to be a strict parent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put up with any nonsense. It was all the classic, they're going to sleep in their own bed. They're going to eat what I give them. They're going to do what they're told. Because my parents, my dad in particular, was very strict.
Yeah.
And that was the deal. And also it was a different time. You know, I was born in the 80s. We were raised by baby boomers. Like, they had a set of ideals as parents that they followed. And so people, I think even our age, are still inclined to go for that very authoritarian parenting style.
I really believe that we're the generation that kind of breaks that cycle a little bit, that authoritarian, and to more of an open awareness style of parenting.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't remember where I learned this from, but it was something about, you know, when your child's having a tantrum or a meltdown, their nervous system is literally in fight or flight mode, and they are physiologically unable to regulate themselves because they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then if the parent then as a reaction loses their shit, is triggered, and then goes into fight and flight and is shouting and screaming, that is terrifying for a child to see, because it means my main carer has also lost it. And so then their child's on their own. Then they have to regulate on their own.
And that brings in fear. And look at this objectively and know this isn't the case. But I still feel he is like this because of me. because I did something wrong.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
like,
it's your narrative that you were raised with, right? It's ingrained in you.
Yeah. Personal responsibility. Because when Kit was born, I had really severe postnatal depression. I was very, very unwell for at least 18 months, 2 years. And I didn't have support. I hadn't really made friends with other parents. I was very, very isolated, and I was very lonely. And when Kit got some of his diagnoses last year, one thing the psychiatrist said, because he has attachment disorder, is that's at least partly because you didn't bond with him in those early months. And that's something I'm always going to carry with me.
The reason why I think it's such a shame is because given the right conditions and the right society and the right people around you, ADHD and autism isn't a hindrance, right? It shouldn't be a problem. It's just when the structures that are built for people are very neurodivergent friendly. Like, they're just not friendly.
And I think especially when you're a child, you don't have autonomy over your own life.
No.
You do what your parents have, you go to school, you do this, you do that. As an adult, you can, obviously a lot of it depends on your circumstances, and there's a huge element of privilege within that, but you can kind of alter your life to what suits you. Now, I'm not saying, oh yeah, we should let kids decide, everything they want to do all of the time. But for me, I find it helpful when he is having those meltdowns to think, if I was in that situation, I would probably feel similar. I would probably also have a big reaction, but my prefrontal cortex is developed.
Exactly.
His isn't yet.
Yeah, we definitely, with raising Bella, we've definitely always tried to let her have as much autonomy and decision making as she can without it, risking injury to herself, someone else, or to stuff, right? And by doing that, then when we put not a demand, but like a healthy, what do you call it? Boundary, then she's more likely to take to it. Not all the time, depends where she is developmentally, depends on the day, depends how tired, depends how much sugar, all of it. But definitely, you can feel it. Like if I'm having a bad day and I'm being a little bit more no-y to her, like, no this, I don't want to do that, we're not going to do this. Like an hour of me saying no, and then she's like zooped up, she's ready to blow.
It's really interesting, the thing about boundaries, because I've found that I've had to put firmer boundaries down since my youngest came along, because Birdie's a baby, and I often have to remind Kit, you've got to be careful. You can't be leaping around when she's moving about on the floor. You can't just grab her. All of this. Yeah. Previously, he'd been an only child for 5 years, and so he was allowed to jump around in the garden and do a lot of the things that now he has to be much more considerate because there's an infant in his life. But actually, that has taught him quite a lot. The fact that the boundary is there, and I've explained why it's there, has helped him realize kind of what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Yeah,
you can definitely tell I can tell that. Obviously I can tell Bella's an only child, but like there's certain characteristics about her where it's like, if she had a younger brother or sister, she wouldn't be like this, because she's just, the older child has to adapt quite quickly because of all the new rules in place for the safety of the younger child.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's only child syndrome. It's not a bad thing. It's just, she will struggle more to do certain things than a child of 2 will have, because she's just not had to face it yet.
Yeah.
And she might learn that later on with friends. Do you know what I mean? It's
interesting, as Birdie's getting older, she's a toddler now, and she's really started standing her ground with her brother. She will say to him, no, no. And she will stick her arm out, when he's right in her face.
Yeah, good for her.
They will fight over toys now. And I think, that is good for her. I want her to be able to stand her ground. And there's something I read a little while ago, which was for siblings of neurodivergent children, You don't want them to feel like they are the sibling. You want them to feel like a person in their own right.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very conscious of that with my two. I think because Kit takes up so much of my headspace, I have to be hyper vigilant with him all the time, but especially when we're out and about, because he can lash out at other children, physically and verbally. And so I'm always like, okay, where is he now? Is there a risk that this might happen? The fight we've had to get an EHCP, which has just been granted.
What's that?
It's an educational healthcare plan. So it's essentially a statement from a local authority that says this child has a neurodivergence or a disability or a medical need, and therefore they are entitled to these adjustments in his education. And that there's a huge spectrum within that.
Yeah.
You will get some children who are dyslexic, and their EHCP will say they need extra time in exams, they need maybe some support with reading and writing. And then you will get, in Kit's case, his EHCP says he needs to be in a specialist setting. He will not cope in a mainstream environment. Yeah. And you have to fight for them. It's really, really hard to get an EHCP.
It surprises me that by now, with the amount of awareness we've got of neurodivergent like kids and adults, that they haven't got more schools designed just for this.
I think that's part of the problem because they're expensive. So if I think about the school that Kit's going into in September, they have a maximum class size of 8 kids.
Right.
They have a staff ratio, I think it's 4-1. That's very expensive to like pay those staff salaries, to make sure all of that, compared to a mainstream school where you can have a classroom of 30 kids, 1 teacher and 1 teaching assistant.
But if you think like there's, say it's 10% of children are neurodivergent, if you make a mainstream school for that 10%, doesn't it kind of level out? Like it's.
I totally agree. I totally agree. But for decades, there's been an underinvestment in, well, all public services, including education, including NHS. CAMS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, has been criminally underfunded for years and years. So there just isn't the provision there. So you have to really fight for every scrap of provision, and it is incredibly difficult, really, really difficult. We were amazed that we even got an EHCP.
Yeah.
Because when Kit was in the school he was in initially for reception, we'd raised it, said we think we should apply for one. They said there's no point, you won't get one. When we then moved him to another school, they were so supportive. They were brilliant. They were saying, yes, we'll help you apply. We'll get all this paperwork. Let's do it together. But we were made aware that it's a very lengthy process. The vast majority of cases, the local authority will reject them. However, if you then take them to appeal, the appeal rate is really, really high. So I think the default is almost reject them, but then if parents are really going to fight for it, then concede. So it's really, really difficult to get it. And I think we're aware of how incredibly fortunate we are. But a lot of that is a result of our privilege.
Yeah,
because we are 2 parents, English is our first language. We are confident and educated, and we're in professions where we're comfortable speaking to people in sort of senior positions of authority. We kind of know the language of the public sector.
Yeah, it all comes into play when you're speaking to these people.
Whereas if you are a single parent, maybe you've got 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, you've got several other children, you're worried about, how you're going to pay your rent, you don't have the time or the headspace or the resources to put together the vast amount of incredibly detailed information that they require.
Yeah, they're intentionally difficult to do these things.
Of course, it's the same with everything. Recently I put an application in for disabled living allowance for Kit, and that's the same thing. It's a 50-page form where you have to put in so much information. I booked a day off work to go through it and get all of this, and I spoke to various charities. I spoke to other parents I know who'd been successful in their application and all of that. But I've got a degree, I've got 15 years working in communications, I can write. I was struggling with it.
There's I've recently, about 15 months ago, I applied for access to work. So in order to try and get some support work to help me with my business, because my ADHD is such a struggle. And I did it through a company called Celebrate Difference that just do all the work for you. They do all the paperwork, they do all the legislation, they know the lingo, and they know not the loopholes, but the way to translate what the issue is. And I was looking at everything that they're doing, and this is like a benefit that I'm trying to get because of my ADHD. But in order to get it, it is the least ADHD friendly thing that you could ever do. And I was like, I've had countless meetings with my representative from Celebrate Difference, who she speaks for me when I'm like blank, because they try, not that they trick you out, but they ask you questions to things where you're not sure sometimes because it's so in depth. But then they've done this before. I was like, God, if I was doing all this on my own, I would have lost this case ages ago. So when did you start realizing or start thinking that you had ADHD?
Fairly recently, probably in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it was motherhood, really, that for me, everything came to a head, because I was so overwhelmed and I was so overstimulated all the time, because parenting is overstimulating. It's noisy. It's exhausting. You don't get enough sleep.
It's triggering.
It demands on you. I think especially, when you have very young children, when you've got babies and toddlers, especially if you're breastfeeding, you're touched out all the time because they're just on you all the time.
It took me years to understand what that really meant.
Yeah.
Briggy used to say, like, I'm touched out. I'm like, what do you mean you're touched out? And then I started looking into it. I'm like, oh,
exactly.
Literally touched. Like,
yeah.
Kids just don't stop, do they?
Well, like, I came home from work this afternoon and immediately the baby was in my lap. Kit was like millimeters from my face telling me about his latest robot special interest. Like, you
don't get a minute to decompress.
No.
And I feel like the mother gets that like 10 times more than the father.
Yeah.
Especially when they're very little.
Yeah, definitely. And the more I thought about it and the more I looked at Kit, I recognised things that had been there in my own childhood, but in quite a different way, because obviously, I was socialised female. But especially in terms of the emotional regulation, I would find it very hard as a little girl. I was always branded very sensitive, sometimes volatile. At home, my sister, absolute genius at winding me up. She knew exactly what to do to just like overwhelm me, just like really, really bother me. So I would just snap very quickly and fly into rages. Like, I would chase her around the house with a knife.
Jesus.
This is partly sort of like 80s, 90s, like hands-off parenting. And my parents were like, they'll work it out, you know. There was one incident when I was a teenager. So I had an injury. I was on crutches. And my sister just annoyed me so much. She had slammed the door to this room. This door had glass panels. I got my crutches and I just smashed those glass panels just to get to her because I was just so angry. And I would just get so overwhelmed by emotion. But at the same time, I was incredibly people-pleasing. So I did really, really well at school. And I was so desperate for praise, and I could hyper-focus on academic work. I found it, especially when I went to university, I studied history. History had become my special interest, and I would be able to retain all this information, hyper-focus on it, but then I'd get burnt out.
Yeah.
And that manifested itself in like full-blown nervous breakdowns when I was at university. When I left university and went into the world of work, I would do really well at interview because I'd be very confident, I'd be very articulate, like I can really win people over. But then the job itself, I'd get bored after 6 months and I'd move on to something else. I couldn't stick at something. And the more I reflected on that, after I had Kit and when I started to see a lot of those ADHD characteristics, the more I thought, this really chimes with my experience, but I think I have masked incredibly effectively
Yeah.
over my life. And I think I put things in place to manage it or to self-medicate. So like booze, my early 20s, I wasn't a heavy drinker, but I would drink, you know, when I was out because I didn't really know like how to read the room. And so I put on this persona of like, hey, there's fun Kate, like, oh, you know what she's like she's always like just a bit wild and just a bit crazy, and she'll always have a fun time, and oh, she's really flirty, and you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And from the outside, it looked like I was having a great time. Internally, it was awful, just totally overstimulated. In fact, I had to leave London because I found it such an overstimulating place. I lived there for several years. It's where I met my kid's dad. But the sensory overload, the noise. I think it's really interesting you mentioned anger, because I think my experience of parenting a neurodivergent child, anger comes up quite a lot. He often feels angry when he's overstimulated. But for a long time, I felt angry. I felt like this is not what I signed up for. Because I didn't really know what kids were like before I had them. I didn't realize how fucking hard it is. So there's that. But also, and from very early days, from when he was a baby, the other mums be talking about, oh, it's so amazing. He started sleeping through the night. We started doing this. Kid didn't sleep through the night until he was 4. And even now, it takes a good 3-4 hours for him to fall asleep at night. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't babble. It's fascinating now. I've got a younger child who is doing those things. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
those differences are so evident. And I think I felt anger. I felt, why are they enjoying
Did it feel
parenthood?
unfair? Like you
Felt
cheated
unfair.
sort of thing?
It felt unfair. I felt angry that I'd been deprived of those experiences. But I also felt, oh, am I just not good at this? Because until I became a mum, had been good at pretty much everything in my life. I'd done well at school, got into a really good university, did well at university.
And you
had done well in
prided
my
yourself
career.
on that.
That was a
That was
huge
like-
part of my identity, is like, oh, Kate's intelligent and she's good at shit. Suddenly, here's something that
You're
I'm
not
not
good at.
good at. There was so much anger mixed with a feeling of failure.
But
and
to
a feeling that
reframe,
wasn't
it's
good enough.
how you perceived you weren't good at it.
Yeah.
Right.
What has changed my perception is having that validation through the diagnoses and through all the external agencies that have been involved that Kit is neurodivergent. He's autistic, very likely has ADHD, he has attachment disorder, he has dyspraxia, all these things. It's like, yeah, no, he fits the bill. He
has
all that.
extra challenges, and there by proxy, so do the parents, right?
Yeah. But then it's also seeing Birdie, my youngest, who is thriving, and she can make eye contact. She's already got loads of words. She's doing all those developmental milestones that I envied other people's children.
Yeah, sure.
When they met. And it's difficult because I realise it could be interpreted as like, oh, I've got a normal child, so I'm happy now. It's not that. It's not that. It's, to me, it feels like it's not that I'm really shit at it. It's that his brain works differently. And
it's really difficult.
And it's really difficult. And no one trains you on that.
Yeah.
But actually, I wanted to talk about the really great things
Yes.
about neurodivergent parenting. One of these is, so Kit is a Gestalt language processor. I've probably mispronounced that, but do you know what that is?
No.
So when children acquire language, there are 2 ways in which they do it. One, I think, is called like analytical language processing, which is where they will pick up a few words, they would understand the meaning. So Birdie, my youngest, has started saying cat, dog, book, door, and pointing to those things, and she understands that. There's Gestalt language processing, which is often but not exclusively how a lot of neurodivergent children will start to use language. So Kit was very delayed in his speech, and he had speech and language therapy. He didn't talk for a very long time, and then it was almost overnight he started speaking in full sentences. because that form of processing it's almost as if they memorize phrases and repeat those phrases, but they don't quite know what they mean. And I love it because the stuff he comes out with, he essentially talks like a 60-year-old gay man. He started saying things like, "What a lovely fellow."
Nice.
I just love it. I just
like a
love it.
A little wise old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says it, with an adult kind of cadence and yeah. So really I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the really positive things?
The really positive things.
For you as a neurodivergent parent?
In those moments where I am tapped into my hyperactivity, I can very easily slide into being very childlike and childish with Bella.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, partly I've worked on it, so I don't care who's around me anymore. Whereas before I was very self-conscious. So when I allow my ADHD hyperactivity part to explore, it really does. And I feel quite high when I'm in that place.
Yeah. And
it's all just kind of flowing. And sometimes I've got to keep on top of it because I can get quite loud and then I don't want to disrupt other people and other neurodivergents, funnily enough. But I can definitely tap into that kind of playful side of my ADHD. And I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot. I also I think I would have been quite creative regardless of the neurodivergency, but there's something to be had where you've got a brain which kind of gives you answers, even if you're not trying. Like in a conversation, there's always stuff going on in the back of my head, and I kind of enjoy that. I also like having the song in the back of my head all the time. That's kind of comforting.
Yeah.
Even though as a kid, I used to not be able to sleep because I had songs in my head. The
constant internal monologue. And I really relate to that on both counts. So I feel like I'm the fun parent because I'd be like, yeah, we're going to do this. And I can bring the high energy and be like, yeah, we're going to go do this now. It's going to be really fun. And I love that. I also think that kind of quick thinking has really benefited me in my professional life.
Yeah.
And it's benefited me in terms of social relationships as well, because I'm genuinely so curious about people and I will ask them lots of questions and often quite deep conversations. I don't really do small talk, but as a result, I've got some very strong friendships, really meaningful connections. And I love that.
I think another thing that especially, I don't know for my autistic brothers and sisters, but I definitely know for ADHDers, you grow a big sense of understanding for other people that struggle or might be neurodivergent or might be a little bit different. It's like it's easy. You can put yourself in their shoes because you've experienced it yourself. And that's a gift in itself. Because I've met other people where they're clearly neurodivergent, whether they know it or not. But you can then, you can offer them then more patience or understanding for them, and that goes for other things as well, just anxiety. If you can see someone's anxious, you can kind of accommodate a little bit more because you can first of all recognize it, but also what it's like to be anxious.
I think that also spurs you on to create your own community.
Yeah, of course.
So for me, the last few years, I've made a concerted effort to build a community of fellow parents, fellow neurodivergent people, fellow queer parents as well, because I'm well, my family isn't kind of
doing it,
isn't there.
Yeah.
I'm going to create a found family. And that's something that, because I came of age in the queer community, that's something that's been a cornerstone of that community, is that idea of found family. And I think for me, who is raising this neurodivergent child and kind of exploring my own neurodivergence, I want to bring that to it as well. So I don't want to waste my time with the judgmental parents.
No, and I think a lot of neurodivergent people, especially if they are aware of it, they are more patient and understanding, and they'll see if another parent is struggling with their neurodivergent child, and there won't be judgment because they'll relate, they'll get it. And that's important.
And it means that my kids have these people in their lives,
Yeah.
who are so understanding and caring and loving and patient, who, you know, when they're teenagers, maybe they can go chat to them about a particular thing, or, you know, they've got...
That's our modern day village right there. You know, it's like it's making a village amongst a society that isn't set up for one.
Yeah.
It's like having those adults that you trust, and more importantly, that your children trust. You know, that's really nice. Like I see it with Bella. Like she's very sociable anyway, but she's got her adults that she can talk to.
Yeah.
And she enjoys talking to, and like she considers them friends, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and they're all neurodivergent. Like whether that's a coincidence or not, I'm not sure, but I don't know. Well, they're not all neurodivergent. I'll take that back because I just thought of one. And I was like, oh, shit. It's not fair to say. It's not fair to say because there's a lot of neurotypical people that are understanding and aware, and they've looked into it, and you know, because they've researched it, they kind of get it.
Yeah.
They'll never have experienced it, but everyone's able to learn, right? Like lack of awareness is almost a choice these days, I feel. You know, I think.
What would your advice be to a parent really struggling with their own neurodivergence, or
Well, I think
struggling with a neurodivergent child?
I think they're two different challenges, right? But I would say like the most important thing is research it as much as you can from as many different sources as you can, because there's a lot of conflicting opinions. But if you take in as much information about what it means to be ADHD, how that presents in different people, and then, you know, looking into the coping strategies for yourself, and then how to help someone with ADHD, because raising a child with ADHD is different than raising a child without ADHD. And sure, every child is different anyway. But like if you've got 100 ADHD boys and girls and 100 non-ADHD boys and girls, you're going to see a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just is. So I'd just say like look into it and give yourself fucking grace for the process, because it's difficult. It's really difficult. And you know, we've only got the tools that we've either been given or learnt ourselves. So get some more tools, you know.
My advice would be connect with other parents.
Yeah.
Have conversations. Like the number of parents that I've just struck up conversations with in the playground or at a community centre, and you know, you find out that people have their own challenges.
It definitely alleviates a lot of the isolation, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And also some of the guilt that comes with everything. Like parenting alone like if there's not a little bit of guilt there, you're not doing it right. Like you're gonna feel shit at some point. But then talking to other parents, you're like, oh yeah, we're all struggling. We're all doing the best that we can. And there's a lot of insight from talking to other parents, you know, because we're all on our own journeys and we're picking different bits of information, and some of it works for some of us and some of it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, just to be what's the word? Like just to be nice, man. Like just be empathetic with your fellow parents.
Yeah.
Like your other kids' friends and kids' parents.
Yeah. And I think going back to your point about social media, don't be tempted to kind of fall down a social media rabbit hole, because there's so many parenting influencers out there these days, right? And
some of them are shit.
Some of them are like actively harmful. I stumbled across, I don't know why Instagram thought I wanted to watch this video, but it presented me with this video of this American like trad wife mummy influencer thing, talking about how you know, she doesn't want her children to play with badly behaved children because it's not her fault that they haven't been parented properly, and she shouldn't be held responsible for it. She doesn't want her children even playing with children like that. And it just, for me, you know, as the mother of the badly behaved child, it just made me feel awful.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of parents don't want their kids to play with my son.
Yeah.
And it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, I
it
can
really
imagine.
is. And seeing that kind of content just compounds that. So I think just like be selective with your
It's
social
also
media feeds.
misinformed. There's a lot of misinformed content out there,
Yeah.
you know that.
And also there's a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of people just doing it like to get engagement.
Yeah, I think in terms of like researching like ADHD and all of that, like look for the professors and the people that have really learnt it and they don't have a bias. You know?
Yeah. A lot of those content creators have an agenda as well.
Yeah.
A lot of them are, you know, whether it's kind of a political agenda or whether it's like, you know, oh, I parent this way and this is the only way to parent, or, you know, I think you have to look very, very critically at what are they trying to get across, and actually, is that something that is worth your time?
Exactly.
Probably not.
No.
But it's hard. It's hard because we live in a world that puts huge amount of pressure on parents and says that basically you can never do it right. You're going to be criticised whatever you do. You're going to be criticised however your children are. And so it's difficult to escape that, isn't it?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's the hardest job in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I used to scoff at that. But it really is.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. It's so
It's the
hard.
hardest. It's the
It's so
absolute
hard.
hardest.
And there's no breaks.
No.
No breaks.
I only really appreciated it when I lost a job a couple of years ago, and then Briggy had to be working more and I had to stay home more. And then suddenly I was with Bella 5 days a week. And like after a week, I was like, oh, fucking hell, this is a lot. Like you don't realize until you do it. And I don't think you can ever explain it to someone properly until they do it. Like raising these little dependent human beings.
Yeah.
That are super neurotic.
Oh, yeah.
And like undeveloped brains, right? Like they're just on automatic, impulsive.
Yeah.
Let alone if they're neurodivergent.
And you love them so much. You think they're so wonderful. You think they're incredible. But also you're like, oh my God, like this is impossible.
Yeah,
Like,
you're draining me, child.
yes. Yeah, in every sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'd like to do more with this conversation. I'd like, you know, I want to speak to other people, other parents, experts, people who've got, you know, different lived experiences. But I think I want people to listen to this, whether they're parents or not. And if anything in it resonates with them, I want them to know that they're not broken. There's not something wrong with them. We're living in a really, really tough time at the moment. And we live in a very demanding world that can exacerbate a lot of the stress for neurodivergent people. You know, we've got phones pinging, demanding our attention all the time. We've got financial pressures, world's on
Societal
fire,
pressures.
all of that. Like, it's a really stressful time for a lot of people. And I think a lot of that becomes especially acute when you're a parent and you think about what world is my child going to grow up to be in. But I think there are positives. I think the fact that we're having this conversation, that other people are having this conversation, that there's more and more understanding about neurodivergence really gives me hope. And I want people who identify with any of that to know you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you.
Absolutely.
But there's changes that we can make together.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
This was fun.
Nice one.
Yeah. And that's it for this week's conversation on Parenting Off Script. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of this community. I hope today's episode offered you a moment of recognition, a practical tip, or even just a little bit of comfort. If you enjoyed this episode, please do 2 things for us. Hit that subscribe or follow button on whatever app you're listening on right now, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere. This is the best way to make sure you never miss a new episode. Come and join the conversation online. Find us on your usual social media platforms by searching for Parenting Off Script. We'd love hearing your experiences, your questions, and what you'd like to cover next. Sharing this podcast with another SEND parent you know is also the highest compliment you can pay us. So thank you in advance for helping our community grow. Until next time, keep trusting your gut, keep advocating, and keep parenting off script.